I've been taking my time, taking all of your time, taking all of your time.
Hey, my trendies, trendsetters, and my trendy tribe. Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Let me know if you can hear me. Hey, Gwen, thank you for donating 5 memberships. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Y'all, welcome to the trendy tribe. Let me see. Okay, sound checking this says yes. Y'all can hear me. Okay. Whoops. Jesus, I have all my stuff set up. Okay. Hold on. I can only do this at the beginning because I'm gonna try not to interrupt anything too much. Okay. So welcome to any new members that come in now or later. I appreciate y'all.
Oh, bring it in. Starting from the bottom, now we're here. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna get right into it. Hopefully you have watched True T's video first. I saw you in the chat, True T. Hey. Hopefully you have watched her video first. She has always laid the groundwork, and not just laid the groundwork, but she is like front line. Sis is front line, okay? So I definitely need y'all to make sure you're there. And of course, Black Titanic, because she's in it. So make sure you're supporting Black Titanic as well. And then of course support here for Hot Tea, Lil Sis as well. Definitely. Okay, let's go to the courtroom. I'm gonna have to be like Queen Sheba and just say, if you want me to see it, you probably gonna put a color behind it because I'm a read and not interrupt too much, and I will try not to interrupt myself mid sentence. Treat me like an audiobook, okay? Because you're gonna have to have me just playing, have your snacks, or go do some chores, whatever you got to do, but treat me like an audiobook today, okay? All right, let's go to the courtroom. Mm-mm. All right. They saying they saw you, True T. And I linked her video in my description box as well. Okay. So obviously y'all understand I won't be able to do greetings at this point. So let's get started. And because there was personal identifiable information peppered a lot throughout the document, I instead took snapshots so you could see the main things, and then I will be reading from what I can see to make sure, just in case I didn't redact properly. I just didn't want to take the chance, just in case. Let's see here. So I'm gonna make that bigger so y'all can see it. So this part says, you know what? Let me read my own document. All right. Maurice J. Scott Jr. was the plaintiff versus Black Titanic et al. Defendants, but Black Titanic has also now become the counterclaim plaintiff. Shout out to Black Titanic versus Maurice J. Scott Sr. a plaintiff and counter-defendant, and all other names used or known by in his individual representative and agent capacities, and as cast member, representative, and agent of Owns Love and Marriage Huntsville, jointly, individually, and or severally liable, and Oprah Winfrey Network LLC, aka OWN, a foreign entity, and all other names used or known by a third-party defendant and its agents who caused the airing of Love and Marriage Huntsville while casting Maurice J. Scott Sr. And fictitious counter defendants A, B, C, D, and D, any and all fictitious parties or entities who are vicariously or otherwise imputed with allowing, ratifying, and or promoting the conduct of Maurice Scott, jointly, individually, and or severally liable. The names and identities of fictitious parties will be named after further discovery. Okay. All right. Answer to plaintiff's Maurice J. Scott Jr. amended complaint, affirmative defenses, counterclaim against Maurice J. Scott Sr., and cross-claim against Oprah Winfrey Network OWN. All right. Let's get into it. Answer and affirmative defenses. Black Titanic denies each and every material allegation and demands strict proof and proof that was properly served by Maurice J. Scott Sr., hereinafter referred to as Maurice Scott or Mr. Scott, proof that claims of Maurice Scott against Black Titanic are properly before this court, proof that Maurice Scott has served Black Titanic or any required defendant within the required 120 days. The counterclaim and third-party claims of Black Titanic shall survive any dismissal of claims made against her, does not waive any objections or defenses. Oprah Winfrey Network is a party referenced by Maurice Scott in his complaint, and as amended, now added hereto, other liable necessary fictitious parties will be added and named once those identities are known through discovery. Okay. I'm just getting the screen ready. Sorry for the dead noise for a second. All right. Number 2 is the other affirmative defenses. Lack of subject matter jurisdiction, lack of jurisdiction over the person, improper venue, insufficient process, failure to state a claim, failure to join a party. Pleadings are due to be struck. All Rule 12B objections, lack of correct jurisdictional statement. Punitive damages are statutorily barred. Other damages are barred. Claims are barred. Collateral estoppel, res judicata, misrepresentation, failure to mitigate, lack of conditions precedent, lack of strict proof, all other affirmative defenses not named. Neither Black Titanic nor her attorney waived timely service as required under Rule 4 of ARCP, and Black Titanic has not been properly served by plaintiff Maurice Scott, his original or amended complaint in this action. Counter and cross complaint against Maurice Scott and Oprah Winfrey Network and general allegation background. So this is establishing their jurisdiction on why. Obviously, we already know why it's going to be Maurice in Huntsville and Madison, but they also, I just want to read the statement on how it ties in on TV in this jurisdiction. And it says the common contact and connection between these parties is Huntsville, Alabama, as the Huntsville, Alabama filmed reality show Love and Marriage Huntsville is ultimately controlled and aired by the Oprah Winfrey Network. Huntsville celebrity and cast member Maurice J. Scott Sr. and the Madison County, Alabama courthouse are located in Huntsville, Alabama, where other alleged conduct has occurred concerning Black Titanic. Mr. Maurice Scott, also referred to hereinafter as Mr. Scott, calls himself a celebrity. Mr. Scott has submitted and filed a lawsuit on or about December 22nd, 2023, in the above styled case, representing himself and possibly the show in which he appears, and he references therein, namely Love and Marriage Huntsville. Mr. Scott appears before television and or internet viewers by way of the Oprah Winfrey Network, also called OWN. Accordingly, there is clearly a public interest in Mr. Scott and those that have placed him before a viewing audience for profit. Based upon a reasonable understanding of the content of Mr. Scott's pro se, meaning he's representing himself, or representative filings in which he calls a complaint and as amended, Mr. Scott has made a showing that he is lacking in a basic understanding of the United States Constitution and lacking understanding that defamation is a cause of action where required elements must be properly alleged. In Smith versus Huntsville Times, the courts determine what is false statement and what is malice. This standard is satisfied by proof that a false statement was made with knowledge that it was false or with reckless disregard of whether it was false or not. A defendant acts with reckless disregard if at the time of publication the defendant entertained serious doubts as to the truth of its publication or acted with a high degree of awareness of its probable falsity. The actual malice standard is subjective. The plaintiff must prove that the defendant actually entertained a serious doubt. Malice can be shown by circumstantial evidence showing, for example, that the story was 1, fabricated, 2, so inherently improbable that only a reckless man would have put it in circulation, or 3, based wholly on a source that the defendant had obvious reasons to doubt, such as an unverified anonymous telephone call. However, malice cannot be measured by whether a reasonably prudent man, and they mean person, would have published or would have investigated before publishing. Indeed, the failure to investigate does not constitute malice. Defamation is not an abstract word or a feeling. Defamation must be proven and is wholly defeated by truth, opinion, privilege, retraction, or matters of public interest. Mr. Scott, who calls himself a celebrity, therefore appears as a public figure. For a public figure such as Mr. Scott, in order to recover, defamation must accompany actual, particularly described malice, none of which has been sufficiently alleged by Mr. Scott. Furthermore, Mr. Scott cites absolutely not even one Alabama or any other statute supporting his alleged causes of action. Documents filed by Mr. Scott and those he may represent are of public interest. On December 22, 2023, Maurice Scott filed a lawsuit in the Madison County Circuit Court in the above styled case, void of any cited Alabama statute or the United States Constitution, against 3 female African-American viewers of Oprah Winfrey Network's reality television show, Love and Marriage Huntsville, filmed in Huntsville, Alabama, namely Black Titanic. Mr. Scott promotes himself as a celebrity on and off said reality and constantly promotes watching the show and making sure everyone knows that the show ranks in the top 50 cable television shows for the Saturdays on which it airs. The reality show, Love and Marriage Huntsville, is clearly a success with accolades to the creative genius behind the show. There is nothing private, however, and unfortunately, about the life of Maurice Scott, who has voluntarily allowed the filming an intrusion into his own physical solitude or seclusion, giving publicity to private information about himself, which is often seen as scandalous and lending to a made-for-TV reality drama. There are some in the viewing audience who may not know if Mr. Scott is a real or a fictional character and are curious. For a living, Mr. Scott has been observed playing a role on a TV reality show with adult themes, including criminal, sexual, and social controversies, heated arguments, including the handling of domestic violence, including cast members discussing their own actual pending Madison County, Alabama criminal charges, actually pending, including dysfunctional relationships and other controversial themes or subject matter. Mr. Scott on the show has allowed himself, likely by some agreement, to be put in a false but not always defamatory position in the public eye, while allowing the appropriation of some elements of the Mr. Scott's personality for a commercial use. The show, Love and Marriage Huntsville, appears to be about observing and judging the real lives of selected African American couples, the good, bad, and the positive, and appears highly successful. This success of Love and Marriage Huntsville apparently and undoubtedly comes from a devoted viewing audience such as Black Titanic, who are also free and protected by the United States Constitution. The show appears to invoke laughter, tears, anger, curiosity, criticism, praise, and is enjoyed by a large viewing audience. Each cast member of said show undoubted has fans, and those who dislike them for whatever the reason, some who love the show may not like some of the cast members and vice versa. The Oprah Winfrey Network is responsible for and in control of airing the show and bringing the show to the viewing audience on television and even on the internet. Black Titanic is in the viewing audience. In Mr. Scott's own words, Mr. Scott is a celebrity. At the same time, Mr. Scott has sold his privacy and autonomy for purposes of filming the details of his daily life and relationships while living in the city of Huntsville, Alabama, in a manner designed to spark controversy and gossip. Mr. Scott appears in control of very little and appears to have been coached or empowered to create and file a lawsuit all about himself where he can be in control of his own narration and creativity. Mr. Scott has shown an unreasonably high sense of his own importance, a need for extreme attention, and an unhealthy need for others to admire him. Mr. Scott's apparent need to control and be admired has also led to his fixation with 3 seemingly confident female African American viewers who are the antithesis of Mr. Scott, as shown in Mr. Scott's complaint. Mr. Scott's appearance on said reality show has led him to his viewers, particularly to these 3 female African American women named in Mr. Scott's lawsuit. Mr. Scott has shown that his desire to censor and control these African American women viewers is a full attack at maximum speed on the constitutional right to free speech and freedom of assembly afforded by the First Amendment of our U.S. Constitution. The rights Mr. Scott seeks to devour are those which protect 3 female African American women who are within their right to express their opinions without fear of censorship. Maurice Scott states in his lawsuit that he had been an original cast member of said reality show since it premiered in January 2018. For clarity, this date falls outside of the 2-year statute of limitations for any actionable defamation in the state of Alabama. This show, Love and Marriage Huntsville, actually follows the lives of individuals on the show, as Mr. Scott has confirmed. Mr. Scott also states that the show has gained significant popularity and routinely ranks in the top 50 cable television shows for the Saturdays on which it airs, according to Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott is clearly speaking on behalf of and in defense of the Love and Marriage Huntsville reality show as he seeks the benefit of advertising during this lawsuit while attempting to silence and control the voices of viewers who are African American women. And I just want you to know, almost every time the phrase African American women is listed, it is in bold letters. I just want y'all to know that. Mr. Scott is unfortunately unable to grasp and accept that there are expressed personal opinions about him that often run afoul of the image he has of himself. Mr. Scott is unable to grasp that expressed opinions made about him are for the purpose of entertainment only and not otherwise purposeful or intended to authenticate any fact. Mr. Scott does not grasp that statements of opinion cannot be verifiably proven as true or false, and the law cannot simply intervene with balm for every wounded feeling. I love this attorney and her narrative writing. Mr. Scott believes he is popular and popular based upon his appearance on Love and Marriage Huntsville. And he believes that if he is well known at all, he is well known primarily because of the role he plays on television. Mr. Scott states and describes his own understanding that he plays a role on a reality show and appears to have an understanding that his day-to-day life and most private moments are filmed while viewers observe and watch him on said show every week. Viewers see Mr. Scott as a reality show character and have no ability to know what is scripted, real, or fiction, including the character names or nicknames portrayed in the show. Viewers are entertained much like a soap opera by said show. Accordingly, that which is potentially or actually false, a false light, embarrassing, offensive, suggestive, or reckless are apparently materials publicly disseminated for made-for-TV, reality TV controversy, also called entertainment. That which would highly offend a reasonable person, therefore, cannot be applied in the present case. The reality show in which Mr. Scott appears is completely and seemingly engulfed in adult themes and scandals which likely increase viewership. Accordingly, after each show, the internet is covered in entertainment gossip which keeps viewers watching said show, similar to a soap opera. Accordingly, Mr. Scott's face and picture have been repeatedly scandalized and made the center of jokes, indecency, and immoral suggestions permeated across the internet, as the character Mr. Scott plays on the reality show is designed to do, or at least as should be expected. Mr. Scott not only profits from any gossip that keeps viewers tuned in, but should have known he will receive a variety of treatment from playing a character on such a controversial reality show. Mr. Scott should have known that his image is both fiction and real to some, and that some would not believe he was an actual attorney off the show. Mr. Scott, who calls himself a celebrity, should have known that some would question or become inquisitive about his name and background. Mr. Scott should know that he cannot legally gag his viewing audience. Said reality show, be it real or fiction, was apparently designed to spark emotions, to outrage, to humor, to incite gossip, debate, conversation, critique, and to entertain, an apparent formula for a very successful show with a large viewing audience. Accordingly, Mr. Scott should not punish the viewing audience of the Oprah Winfrey Network for doing exactly what he agreed to do. Said viewers either love or hate certain characters on the show. Accordingly, Mr. Scott has enjoyed financial gain as a result of rumors, scandals, and the real or fictitious adult themes on the reality TV show. Matters, however, appear to be taking a turn for the worse. More recently, Mr. Scott has been unleashed into and onto the viewing audience, as Mr. Scott has become apparently fixated with the hunting down and devouring of African American women viewers and 3 female African American viewers named in his lawsuit, including Black Titanic. Mr. Scott has demonstrated an apparent instability and inability to separate reality from fiction. Accordingly, Mr. Scott has become obsessed with finding these 3 African American women and teaching them a lesson for not obeying his subservient style commands. Unfortunately, Mr. Scott's behavior is no longer entertaining and has crossed the line as Mr. Scott seeks to enter and spill over into the private lives of 3 female African American viewers, as shown in Mr. Scott's complaint. There's a public interest in Mr. Scott's behavior when such behavior is supported by celebrity status and unbridled celebrity-backed and connected resources to severely and potentially harm, traumatize, and torment a hand-picked group of female African American viewers, namely Black Titanic. Mr. Scott is apparently seeking a chilling effect to other female African American viewers as well. He calls them bloggers and content creators. Mr. Scott is actively chilling the free speech of viewers. Mr. Scott has demonstrated a lack of temperament and ability to handle being in the public spotlight or on a reality show. Mr. Scott has taken his frequently tarnished image he plays on a TV reality show very personally. Said reality show has unleashed Mr. Scott onto his viewers as he demonstrates what many would call extreme, aggressive, condescending, misogynistic, and litigious conduct that should be addressed and monitored by those who have placed him before the viewing audience. Mr. Scott demonstrates a dangerous belief that his extreme conduct is justified against these 3 African American women named in his lawsuit, namely Miss Black Titanic. Mr. Scott conveniently omits actual citation to any statutes in his lawsuit because he has decided to handle these 3 African American women on his own and under his own terms. Mr. Scott has essentially begun to keep his eye, see Mr. Scott's amended complaint, exhibits containing facial expressions and the body language of himself, on 3 female African American viewers seeking to teach them a lesson. Mr. Scott is likely, some believe, using this lawsuit as a new theme for his show for advertisement for profit and a way to appear dominant and in control over his TV and internet audience who either like or dislike him since his 2018 debut on Love and Marriage Huntsville. Mr. Scott has weaponized his celebrity status and resources against the public and has frightened and offended his viewers, namely Black Titanic. Based upon Mr. Scott's court filings, Mr. Scott has become increasingly and apparently paranoid and very intimidated by his viewers, particularly those who are African American women. Mr. Scott is distracted from the reality show and appears to have become fixated particularly on the 3 African American women he has selected from his viewing audience, namely Black Titanic. Mr. Scott is fixated on directly and or indirectly suppressing the voices of African American women, and particularly the 3 African American women viewers he has singled out for his lawsuit. In Mr. Scott's complaint, Mr. Scott uses the names of these 3 African American women as if they were slurs, something bad, something beneath him. Mr. Scott has filed a lawsuit centered on himself, where his own exhibits capture his own body language and his own face blown up close in that center of attention to apparently intimidate. Mr. Scott has apparently filed a lawsuit centered upon his own self-elevation and self-esteem while oppressing and villainizing 3 African American women for their voices and assembly. Mr. Scott thereby sends a message to these 3 African American women that their freedom is mistaken. Mr. Scott apparently believes that he is the internet police, where he and he alone may command authority over YouTube, Instagram, and other platforms seeking to dominate, censor, and silence women, particularly African American women. Mr. Scott is apparently no longer able to discern what is real from what is merely an opinion or for purpose of entertainment or journalism, and it is apparent to some that Mr. Scott no longer has the temperament or discernment for a reality show because he is clearly on the attack against his own viewing audience. Mr. Scott demonstrates by his conduct a dangerous notion that someone is out to get him. Mr. Scott has therefore become an apparent endangerment to his own viewing audience, and as a result, Black Titanic has every reason to be concerned by Mr. Scott's seemingly unhinged behavior as observed by many. Mr. Scott, a paid reality show cast member, ranks himself very high as a celebrity, but speaks down to these 3 African American women viewers who Mr. Scott calls bloggers and content creators. Mr. Scott ranks himself very high as a celebrity while he degrades these 3 African American women, accusing them of having raced to the bottom with a desire to garner viewership of their own and to increase engagement and financial benefit from their respective audience as content creators and bloggers. Mr. Scott trivializes the creative talent of African American women while inflating himself. Mr. Scott, on the other hand, has apparently sold his personal privacy in exchange for a spot on a TV reality show while suggesting that 3 female African American viewers have raced to the bottom for money allegedly earned on social media platforms. Mr. Scott suggests that these 3 female African American viewers are but mere bottom feeders juxtaposed to his celebrity status. Mr. Scott is apparently using themes of misogyny to gain attention, to denigrate, to boost himself, to advertise, to harass, and to create drama and relevancy. Accordingly, the lawsuit Mr. Scott has filed in this case is a mere episode of his own creation. Mr. Scott alleges repeatedly that he is a cast member of Love and Marriage Huntsville and represents himself and others in this lawsuit. At the same time, Mr. Scott also attempts to defend Love and Marriage Huntsville and his own law practice. As Mr. Scott has stated, all parts of Mr. Scott's life have been put before a camera for the purpose of a reality show. With no disrespect intended, Mr. Scott's entwined celebrity and legal career are therefore a blur. Mr. Scott's role playing is a blur, as Mr. Scott is a representative of Love and Marriage Huntsville, a celebrity, a character, a hostile foe of African American women who view the show, an opponent to the voices and constitutional freedom of African American women, and now a plaintiff. At any given time, Mr. Scott may appear like a chameleon as any one or more of the above. In Mr. Scott's complaint, he mentions nothing about his name and reputation as a character on a reality television show, his profession since 2018. Mr. Scott does not seem to understand that his public image is the actual character he plays on television, that viewers may not like the character and personality he plays on the television show, and that they have every right to say so. Mr. Scott has filed a lawsuit complaint centered not around any legally defined defamatory statements, but instead about boosting his own image and esteem on the internet and on a television reality show. Accordingly, Mr. Scott's central and reoccurring request for relief in the lawsuit complaint is a public apology from 3 African American women, namely Black Titanic. Mr. Scott apparently wants to see apologetic bowing and a public bending of the knee, an apparent conquering of some sort of 3 African American women. Mr. Scott appears particularly vexed by what he believes are likes and shares received by the 3 African American viewers online, as he is apparently haunted by their growing success and popularity. Mr. Scott is apparently enraged by the popularity of the 3 African American women viewers online and admits that he is attentive to internet postings about cast, participants, and family members of Love and Marriage Huntsville. Furthermore, Mr. Scott is seemingly intimidated, as he suggests, by live streams online, including commentary about Mr. Scott's character on the show. Mr. Scott, as he suggests, has inner trouble with when bloggers are popularized as they post scandals about celebrities, any and all celebrities. Mr. Scott appears to be a spokesperson for Love and Marriage Huntsville, but Mr. Scott has inner trouble with those that follow the lives, work, and relationships of individuals on or related to Love and Marriage Huntsville. Mr. Scott, who calls himself a celebrity, is fixated on capturing a visual of 3 African American women terrified by his threatening behavior and then publicly submitting to him in a most humiliating and apologetic manner. Mr. Scott, who calls himself a celebrity, is seemingly fixated on a visual image of himself bringing 3 African American women into his submission in an open public forum. Mr. Scott, who calls himself a celebrity, apparently desires more attention and to resurrect himself as one holding power over the 3 African American viewers Mr. Scott seeks to terrorize with his baseless claims. Mr. Scott does not state that he has reported any alleged defamatory comments to any service provider. Mr. Scott, as he claims, apparently made or published an Instagram video of himself and attached and published the very comments he alleges were made against him. However, Mr. Scott does not state with clarity the dates of any such comments as alleged, or if any such comments were ever retracted. Mr. Scott is apparently unaware of the prerequisite in Alabama for recovery for vindictive or punitive damages for libel, as he has conceded in his complaint that there was an investigation by Black Titanic, but the investigation should have continued longer regarding the alleged defamatory statements. In Mr. Scott's complaint, he also refers to Ms. Black Titanic as an investigative journalist, but says nothing about the inherent privileges of such a title, which defeat claims of defamation. In Mr. Scott's complaint, there is no malice alleged or specifically described by Mr. Scott, or Mr. Scott has himself negated that very element, malice, required for a defamation action by a celebrity or for punitive damages. See Smith versus Huntsville Times. Cited above, where failure to properly investigate is not sufficient to show or allege malice. In addition to negating the element of recklessness, Mr. Scott does not allege in his complaint that within 5 days prior to the commencement of this lawsuit that he made any written demand upon Ms. Black Titanic for any public retraction of the matter allegedly published, that Ms. Black Titanic has received such written demand, or that by Ms. Black Titanic failing to proper publish a retraction after receiving such written demand as prescribed under Alabama law. In Alabama, if a retraction is published with 10 days of a publication, only actual damages may be recovered. A refusal to retract after receiving a written demand to do so, as prescribed under Alabama law, demonstrates malice. Mr. Scott negates malice when he concedes that he has not served written notice for any retraction prior to filing this litigation, followed by a refusal. Furthermore, Mr. Scott negates his own claim by alleging or insinuating that a good faith effort was in fact made to investigate, but that the efforts were simply inadequate according to Mr. Scott, and he refers to Ms. Black Titanic as an investigative journalist. Okay, I'm taking a quick break, y'all. I gotta get some water. Hold on 1 second. IPV, when I tell you this woman, this attorney is a lyrical genius on legal paper, oh my gosh, I am like reading and I'm trying to keep it straight so y'all can hear everything clearly. But don't think I'm not like, oh my goodness, ma'am. Ma'am, when this case is over, if you want to come home over here, we can talk. Wow. Okay, y'all. Hold on, let me keep going. I appreciate it. Yes, I have to hydrate. Okay. Let me see. Mr. Scott is confused. Mr. Scott seems to be confusing hyperbolism and hypotheticals with actual facts. Mr. Scott seems to confuse gossip with statements or assertions of fact. Mr. Scott seems to confuse a healthy debate among a few individuals with actual asserted facts made in public. Mr. Scott seems to confuse opinion and assumptions with a statement of fact. Mr. Scott repeatedly alleges and concedes in his own complaint that comments allegedly made about him were made using the word allegedly. Mr. Scott has also acknowledged in his complaint that trolling also occurs on social media where someone may make comments pretending to be someone else, and Mr. Scott does not rule out common problems with counterfeit social media posts. In Mr. Scott's complaint, Mr. Scott admits, explains, and concedes that Maurice Scott is a common name, that those allegedly making comments against him did make an attempt to investigate, but in Mr. Scott's opinion, those investigations were inadequate or grossly inadequate. Again, see Smith versus Huntsville Times, where failure to properly investigate is not sufficient to show or allege malice. Malice is a required element against a public figure or celebrity. Mr. Scott suggests and alleges that but for an inadequate investigation into the truth, the comments he alleges were actually believed as possible. That which is believed as possible is therefore not in serious doubt of the truth. Accordingly, in Smith versus Huntsville Times, the courts determined what is a false statement and what is malice. The standard is satisfied by proof that a false statement was made with knowledge that it was false or with reckless disregard of whether it was false or not. A defendant acts with reckless disregard if, at the time of publication, the defendant entertains serious doubts as to the truth. Mr. Scott, who calls himself a celebrity, alleges negligence but has filed an action which requires actual malice against a public figure. And as for the alleged false statement, Mr. Scott concedes that alleged information he calls defamatory was actually believable and possible. Mr. Scott also negates his own complaint, again by implying that the alleged comments were presented as hearsay, made subject to further investigation. Defamation per se cannot be alleged by mere innuendos. Mr. Scott therefore concedes by his own allegation that there is no malice in being merely inadequate or engaged in hearsay. Mr. Scott has therefore foreclosed his own civil action. Mr. Scott attempts to describe the alleged defamatory comments, but is repeatedly unable to make or directly quote the comments, the origin, or the entire context of any alleged conversation. Mr. Scott alleges that when someone spoke and used the pronoun he, that they were speaking about him. Mr. Scott alleges that if someone spoke the name Maurice, they were speaking about him. Much like the Streisand effect, Mr. Scott is claiming to be the he in every alleged conversation, even when his name is not spoken. Innuendos and insinuations are not false statements and will not support slander or libel per se. Such ambiguities, innuendos, and insinuations are not harmful on their face and cannot support defamation per se, and without defamation per se, there cannot be any presumptions made that an alleged statement is harmful. Mr. Scott's entire complaint, as amended, is based upon defamation per se. Mr. Scott has therefore created his own public record and images where he is both claiming to be and denying that he is the target of alleged criminal subject matter allegedly described by another. However, Mr. Scott actually concedes within his own allegations that it was merely inferred, not asserted, that he had been engaged in criminal activity. Mr. Scott does not allege that anyone has commented about active criminal activity, but instead that someone with a similar or the same name has criminal records, which even Mr. Scott admits is true. Mr. Scott admits that Maurice Scott is a common name and does not deny there is a Maurice Scott with a criminal record. Mr. Scott does not admit or deny that his character on the reality show has caused reasonable suspicion about his history and records. The reality show has apparently filmed or covered its own characters who are actively fighting criminal charges. Mr. Scott does not deny that criminal records are a valid public concern regarding any individual or celebrity. Mr. Scott states that the comments he alleges were sufficiently factual to cause belief, negating both malice, negligence, knowingly, and falsity elements. Mr. Scott, who calls himself a celebrity, seeks damages but does not allege any legal basis for damages as a public figure and has alleged no actual damages and has otherwise turned his own amended complaint against himself. Mr. Scott appears very disconnected with the definition of libel and slander, and Mr. Scott cannot point to or isolate the damage he has caused to himself based on the character he plays on reality television. His voluntary waiver of privacy made in order to play a role on reality television his own reposting or republishing the very material he alleges to be defamatory, his own history of complaints, his own bickering with bloggers or content creators, his own intrusion and trolling into private conversation, his own toggling back and forth from reality to fiction, or his own conduct. Furthermore, Mr. Scott cannot isolate or distinguish which defendants or fictitious parties have caused any specific damage, as he alleges. The Streisand effect is the self-inflicted phenomenon which describes an attempt to suppress allegedly defamation statements by publishing the same statement alleged defamatory. Accordingly, Mr. Scott has posted, reposted, published, and has now filed the statements that he claims should not have been made available to the public. Mr. Scott can therefore only calculate and consider damages inflicted upon himself. Mr. Scott alleges there has been a publication, but that Black Titanic has had only... I think this is for Black. I redacted, so now I'm not sure. Mr. Scott alleges there has been a publication, but that Black Titanic has had only 412 subscribers on YouTube as of December 14th, 2023, and 395 total views until she began covering information related to Love and Marriage Huntsville. Mr. Scott has not alleged how 412 subscribers or any such small group of private followers amounts to a publication to the public. Mr. Scott does not allege exactly where and exactly on what date any such post can be found, published, and republished, which he alleges to form a basis of his lawsuit. Mr. Scott does not state the exact origin of any such posts or from what platform each of the posts originated or how such posts have been authenticated. Mr. Scott also alleged that Black Titanic comments were in response to others, but names no such individuals or the full context of any such alleged conversations. Mr. Scott does not allege that any posts or comments in question still exist or the number of times Mr. Scott has published, shared, or republished them himself or made them available to the public, the Streisand effect. Mr. Scott does not allege that he has served any detailed written letter to Miss Black Titanic describing in detail the alleged defamatory comments and then demanding a retraction for any alleged defamatory comments as prescribed under Alabama law. In Alabama, if there is a belief that a defamatory statement has occurred, the first remedy available is a written demand for retraction. Mr. Scott, a reality show actor, chose drama instead. Mr. Scott had no photo or video shots attached to his original complaint filed on December 22nd, 2023. Instead, Mr. Scott has made an irrelevant video of himself a photo opportunity and filed the video image as an exhibit to his amended complaint lawsuit filed 2 months later on February 26, 2024. Mr. Scott's other exhibits concerning alleged defamatory statements are blurred or non-legible in each exhibit. The only completely legible exhibit item is Mr. Scott's billboard-like photo exhibit of his own face. I've been keeping it together. I've been keeping it together. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. Not a billboard-like photo exhibit. Oh, my God. Okay. Oh, get back. Okay. Mr. Scott has apparently made a self-gratifying, undated, unauthenticated video of himself allegedly giving warning to the 3 female African-American viewers named in this lawsuit. The video serves no legal purpose. Mr. Scott's ransom-style video depicts himself as if an emperor blown up and looking close into a camera with aggressive body language and facial expression. Mr. Scott's self-made video was crafted to appear as if Mr. Scott is looking with his eyes focused directly upon 3 female African-American viewers named in his lawsuit. Said video appears scripted, made for television, made for gossip, self-soothing, self-serving, rehearsed, theatric, calculated, threatening, and revengeful. Mr. Scott's video, however, serves no legal purpose other than to harass, threaten, and intimidate. things once again take a turn for the worse, Mr. Scott's video of himself is unsettling and a signal that Mr. Scott, who calls himself a celebrity, could potentially use unlimited resources to bring about harm, seek his own justice, or impose great inconvenience to the 3 female African American viewers, which have become his unhealthy obsession. Mr. Scott's baseless demand for a public apology suggests that Mr. Scott has intended and still intends to force the 3 African American viewers to speak and make a public apology, to say the words that he wants to hear and in the tone and manner in which he wants to hear them. Mr. Scott has cited absolutely no legal entitlement for forcing 3 female African American viewers to hang their heads down in public and speak words that Mr. Scott needs to hear in order to lift his scorn and to release these 3 African American women from his mind. Mr. Scott implies that the apology is a ticket to their freedom. That's all in bold. That he implies the apology is a ticket to their freedom. That whole sentence is in bold. Mr. Scott, who calls himself a celebrity from the Oprah Winfrey Network show Love and Marriage Huntsville, is particularly fixated with one of the 3 female African American viewers by the name of Black Titanic. In Mr. Scott's complaint, Mr. Scott seemingly scoffs at Miss Black Titanic and minimizes what he calls her promotions of literary work, her work as an African American author and educator, the donations she receives, her likes and shares on social media, her audience on social media, and he refers to her as an investigative journalist. Mr. Scott seems hungry for celebrity recognition, intimidated by the popularity of his own TV viewers, and is particularly grieved by the voices of 3 female, confident African American viewers he names and describes in his lawsuit. Mr. Scott, although a self-acclaimed celebrity himself, seeks to bind, minimize, gag, humiliate, and to silence these 3 female African American women, and is very intimidated by their success and popularity. Mr. Scott seems to treat them as pests or confined to a vision of servitude and poverty, never successful. Mr. Scott seeks to gag and reprimand these 3 female African American viewers to soothe his own apparent deep inner conflict with women's rights, freedom of speech among African American women in journalism, and their worth. Mr. Scott has an apparent disturbing visual image of and fixation with each of these 3 African American women performing a public apology at his command. Mr. Scott's fixation with these 3 female African American viewers is disturbing. Mr. Scott's fixation with himself is disturbing. Mr. Scott's video attached to his amended complaint of himself is disturbing. Mr. Scott is seen in a video essentially threatening to take their money if he does not receive a public apology and making threats that a fool and his money are soon departed. Mr. Scott's apparent obsession with making 3 African American women viewers complacent to his commands is troubling. Mr. Scott's apparent fixation and vanity with himself being both popular and a celebrity has reached a point of public concern. Mr. Scott's conduct is frightening to his viewers, especially to Black Titanic, and for good reason. Accordingly, Mr. Scott has taken his wrath to a new level by filing a lawsuit. Mr. Scott has filed a lawsuit against 3 African American women. Before serving the lawsuit upon Black Titanic and the other defendants, Mr. Scott filed in the Madison County Courthouse. In this case, notices of intent to service subpoena ducis tecum were filed to obtain data from several of the largest holders of personal data in the world: PayPal Inc., Meta Platforms, and Meta is Facebook, Instagram, and Google LLC. Mr. Scott aggressively sought the data concerning Black Titanic and the other African American women named. Without question, a download of unscreened data from these moguls is the equivalence of a complete confiscation and capture of persons' identity, their very existence. It is hard to fathom how Mr. Scott would acquire this power and control over another. For purposes of describing fraud with particularity as required by law in a civil action, Mr. Scott has methodically and apparently committed fraudulent and or deceptive acts designed to unlawfully take personal and private data and information from the 3 female African American viewers named in this lawsuit without their knowledge, consent, or objection, namely Black Titanic. This is also better known and defined in courts as an identity theft, for which civil causes of action and remedies also apply, as shown herein. Mr. Scott also claims use of his attorney credentials with access to use of his attorney credentials in addition to a reality TV celebrity status. Apparently, these roles are blended or overlapping at times. These acts as an attorney credentialed reality show cast member, Mr. Scott, were nevertheless methodically carried out as Mr. Scott filed certificates of service authenticating, verifying under Rule 11 of Alabama Rules of Civil Procedure that Black Titanic and her attorney on record, neither of which have appeared or been made parties, had been served notice of the notice of intent to serve the subpoenas. In bold, the Senate says the only way the subpoenas could legally be issued was to first give notice to all parties in the lawsuit. Mr. Scott filed his lawsuit on December 22nd, 2023, and proceeded with apparently falsifying notices for the subpoenas as early as December 28th, 2023, with full knowledge that none of the defendants had been served to even be in his lawsuit. Repeated subpoenas followed for months, while no one had yet been served in any lawsuit, had not appeared on the record, and no attorney appearing on this case on their behalf. Mr. Scott knew that Black Titanic was unrepresented and had not been served with any lawsuit or with any notice of intent to serve any subpoena. Mr. Scott apparently made sure that Black Titanic was named in the original complaint, but without any listed address unknown, so that there would be no possibility whatsoever that Black Titanic would be served or put on legal notice this lawsuit before Mr. Scott could confiscate her private information from the large global data collecting giants, namely PayPal, Meta Platforms, and Google. Things have again turned for the worse. Mr. Scott used apparent deceptive methods described herein to seek and or obtain Black Titanic's personal identifiable information, her PayPal data, her name, address, and date of birth, phone number, email addresses, and all bank account and other described information. It is well known that Google and other data is often stored which tracks an individual's every movement and location, including everything sent, received, every browsing history, all metadata, every photo, every online purchase or payment, and every interaction and keystroke entered on a private computer. It has been said that Google knows more about us than our mothers. This is a dangerous tool in the wrong hands. Mr. Scott is also aware that within such data are likely to be privileged information to and from Black Titanic and her attorneys, doctors regarding minor children, and other data statutorily protected against disclosure. Privileged correspondence with the undersigned attorney is very likely within such information. Mr. Scott does not represent Black Titanic and has no right or standing to waive those statutory privileges on her behalf or by deception to the court. Mr. Scott's actions as a celebrity reality show cast member of Love and Marriage Huntsville are therefore reprehensible and clearly actionable. Mr. Scott has filed notices and has served subpoenas without serving notice to Black Titanic that Mr. Scott has commenced a civil action against her, and before Ms. Black Titanic could answer the civil action or otherwise appear in this civil action. Mr. Scott, acting with attorney credentials, should know of Rule 45 of the Alabama Rules of Civil Procedure, otherwise known as ARCP, and the notice requirement under Rule 45 of ARCP, which is printed on the back of every Alabama civil subpoena. Rule 45 is printed conspicuously on the back of or on the second page of every such subpoena, which states in no uncertain words that all parties in the lawsuit have the right to be present for the production and inspection of the requested documents or information set forth in the subpoena. The second page of said subpoena form defines serving as mailing a copy to the party of the attorney, and that if any objection is made, the party serving the subpoena may not be entitled to inspect and copy the requested materials except pursuant to the order of the court by which the subpoena was issued. Under timely motion by a party, the court may quash the subpoena if the subpoena requires disclosure of privileged or other protected matter. Rule 45 allows a party to make a claim of privilege or protection requiring the receiving party to promptly return, sequester, or destroy the specified information and any copies made, and may be required to take steps to retrieve all information so disclosed to others. Furthermore, Rule 45A3A demands that notice of intent to serve subpoena for production or inspection with the proposed subpoena attached shall be served on every other party, allowing 15 days for any objection before said subpoena is issued. The safety net built into Rule 45 is the strict mandate that such notice may be served freely without leave of court only after 45 days after service of the summons and complaint, the lawsuit, upon any such defendant. Following said 45 days, should any notice of intent to serve subpoena be filed, the clerk shall issue a subpoena only if there are no objections after 15 days from the time the defendant party has notice of the intent to serve the subpoena. Apparently, what Mr. Scott needed most was time. Mr. Scott knew that Black Titanic would not know that Mr. Scott had submitted a certificate of service falsely stating that he had served her and her non-existing attorney with a notice of intent to serve subpoena. Furthermore, Mr. Scott knew that he had prepared a complaint summons at the commencement of this lawsuit stating that the address of Black Titanic was unknown and the court record reflected the same. Mr. Scott knew that there was no attorney of record for Ms. Black Titanic. Mr. Scott then caused the issuance of another complaint summons stating that Black Titanic lived at an address in Madison, Alabama. Mr. Scott's complaint also states falsely that Black Titanic is a resident of the state of Alabama. Mr. Scott spent many additional days attempting to serve Ms. Black Titanic at the Madison, Alabama address, but the return revealed that Ms. Black Titanic did not live at the Madison address. Meanwhile, Mr. Scott was apparently and methodically seeking to obtain Ms. Black Titanic's most private and privileged data, bank account information, and identity data no person would want stolen, obtained unlawfully, or without notice. Not only did Mr. Scott apparently file certificates of service stating falsely that he has served Ms. Black Titanic and her attorney, Mr. Scott entered dates and times on each subpoena to suggest that there is either a scheduled court date or deposition or some other date associated with no lawful activity or court proceeding. Mr. Scott continued to unlawfully cause issuance of subpoenas through about March 11th, 2024. Apparently, what Mr. Scott needed most was time. On February 26, 2024, Mr. Scott filed an amended complaint. Notably, Mr. Scott's original complaint had no exhibits, but his amended complaint contained a large still photo of Mr. Scott looking in close range to a camera directed towards the three named female African-American viewers, including Ms. Black Titanic. The video appears to be ransom-like in nature, in that by February 26, 2024, Mr. Scott was likely holding some, all, or potentially a large compilation of their most personal, privileged, and private data, which would be more than enough to completely steal their identities, cause a lifetime of grief and worry, and or cause extreme chaos in the lives of the three female African-American viewers, namely Ms. Black Titanic. Mr. Scott's photo reasonably suggested that he demand an apology in lieu of using damaging data he had likely collected without proper authorization. Mr. Scott added to his amended complaint, for no legal purpose, his own photo showing his anger, body language, and his eyes that seemed to be fixed upon his intended three recipients, namely Black Titanic. While potentially holding personal privilege and the most sensitive private information clearly, boldly, and likely held at Mr. Scott's free disposal, disbursement, and use, Mr. Scott posts his video picture of himself warning three African-American women that he demands their public apology. An apparent ultimatum given new meaning when the private data of these three women could now be used to completely stalk, spy, terrorize, and embarrass, harass, or steal their identities at Mr. Scott's command or permission. This type of damage is almost immeasurable and similar to the loss of life. Ms. Black Titanic stands punished, publicly humiliated, damaged, and violated by Mr. Scott, who is not a judge or an emperor. Mr. Scott has no plausible immunity for his actions carried out to take Ms. Black Titanic's information through improper and deceptive methods described herein. Any legal privilege ever existing for Mr. Scott has been waived. Legal privilege does not extend to actions or communications made or received for a dishonest purpose to assist a person in committing an offense. After Mr. Scott caused subpoenas to issue based upon his own untruth certified in a court record, Mr. Scott traced and tracked Miss Black Titanic to the state of Georgia and then published her address into this lawsuit and to the public. Mr. Scott's actions were unwise. Mr. Scott's violation of Miss Black Titanic's right to her confidentiality concerning attorney-client privilege, doctor-patient privilege, information concerning minor, information concerning any medical records or disabilities, and any other information completely irrelevant to a defamation case does not come with any litigation privilege or protection from a private cause of action based upon such unauthorized confiscation of statutorily protected information. Circumventing the requirements of Rule 45 of ARCP to obtain and subpoena and to confiscate information by deception are not acts covered by litigation privilege. Such acts are not associated with any litigation process. No attorney or individual has litigation privilege when it is clearly foreseeable of the harm caused by such conduct. No such acts are accepted standards of legal practice. The litigation privilege will not cover acts with no legitimate goal or purpose. Acts committed maliciously are not covered by litigation privilege. To commit any such acts effectively waives any existing litigation privilege. Miss Black Titanic has never waived any of her privileges, and Mr. Scott has no standing to waive them for her and then receive any litigation immunity from his actions. Litigation privilege is therefore, and for good reason, not always outweighed by competing interests, as it does not override any statutory right to confidentiality. Mr. Scott, for example, will never be immune from confiscating information protected by attorney-client privilege. Rule 502D protects the attorney-client privilege, and there is no lawful and legitimate civil proceeding that tramples that privilege. In addition, there is no litigation existing which allows for such conduct or would make such conduct relevant to any litigation proceeding. Litigation privileges are defeated when they are abused or when a party has acted maliciously. Accordingly, litigation privilege will never be honored for a party that has made use of the legal process in an improper manner or to accomplish a purpose for which the privilege protection was not designed, or where a party has attempted to deprive another party of statutory rights that are the foundation of civil litigation. Mr. Scott therefore has no claim to litigation privilege based upon his conduct described herein and above. Okay, I'm taking another water break because now we're going to get into the 21 counts against Maurice and Oprah Winfrey Network. So 1 second, y'all. Let me mute myself. Yes, please share this video. Definitely share the video. True T is trying to make sure it gets out. I'm sure Black Titanic is also trying to make sure it gets out. I'll just say them two for sure. Share the video. I'm gonna say real fast, thank you. Z Real, thank you for the $20 super sticker. Jackie Wilson Rudy says, thank you, True T, for your support of the CCs involved in this lawsuit and trending at some point for reading, sharing the counter response on behalf of Black Titanic. Thank you very much, Jackie. Tanya B said, Lord Farquaad. Oh my gosh, I should have known. And thank you, Stephanie, for the super sticker. I appreciate you. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're about to get into the 21 counts, and I do have a slide just so y'all can see that, and this is where we'll first mention the $5 million amount that you already saw on True T's video, and please check her video out if you didn't see it. I'll link her video in the description box, and every count goes back to referring to the $5 million amount, so we'll see it, and you'll also see, I believe in 21 out of 21 counts, it names Maurice and Oprah Winfrey Network, so I'll get that up for y'all. Let's see here. Okay, this is count one, then I'll show y'all the group of them as we go through it. So this is count one, and this is invasion of privacy. Based upon conduct by Maurice J. Scott Sr. and the adoption ratification control over Maurice Scott, the airway provided by Oprah Winfrey Network otherwise known as owned, bringing content to its viewing audience, has been subjected to conduct that is one, intruding into physical solitude or seclusion, giving publicity to private information about her that violates ordinary decency, putting her in a false but not necessarily defamatory position in the public eye, or appropriating some element of her personality for commercial use. And one second. Okay, and I'm going to read this one time, but the same paragraph is in all 21 counts. As a direct and proximate cause of conduct described herein of Maurice Scott and or Oprah Winfrey Network, Black Titanic has been damaged and therefore seeks compensative, monetary, emotional, actual, punitive, and all other damages allowed by law, which include medical bills, loss of income, travel, inconvenience, attorney fees, costs, all relevant losses, all relevant damages, and amount no less than $5 million, and or any similar or higher amount determined by a jury, and in addition to awards payable due to other counts herein. So I also wanted to point out that they are asking for a trial by jury. Okay. Exactly what his wide hips deserve. How you gonna disrespect your wife and then get mad when they report on it? Right. Okay, so now I'll take you to they're kind of grouped up after this. So you'll see like count 2 through 5 or 6, and we'll keep going from there. So let's see. Okay. Count 2 is for invasion of privacy consistent with a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And based upon conduct by Maurice and the adoption, ratification, control over Maurice Scott, the airway provided by Oprah Winfrey Network, bringing content to its viewing audience, Black Titanic has been subjected to conduct supporting civil action, which includes, but is not limited to, that which prohibits intrusion or trespasses into computer data with lack of proper authorization or by exceeding authorized access, which includes data storage facilities or communications facilities and described computers, including computers that manage website data, and includes access to protected passwords, and includes implied threats to hold or handle such data in exchange for something. Count 3, invasion of privacy consistent with violating unlawful access to stored communications. Black Titanic has been subjected to conduct supporting a civil action which forbids intentionally accessing electronically stored information. Count 4, invasion of privacy through cyber stalking. Black Titanic has been subjected to conduct supporting a civil action against cyber stalking, which involves the use of technology to make an individual fearful or concerned about his or her safety. Cyber stalkers generally employ the internet through emails, blogs, instant messages, video messages, chat rooms, social networks, or other websites which intimidate, harass, and create fear in victims. Cyber stalking is harassing in nature and may include revealing private information, sending threatening messages through text messages or social media, calling or messaging repeatedly and constantly, posting derogatory posts on social media, and sending unwanted and inappropriate photographs or videos. Count 5, intentional infliction of emotional distress through cyberstalking. And it does read similar, so I won't reread that one to you. Count 6, intentional infliction of emotional distress consistent with violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Okay, this one I'll just read the extra. It says it includes data storage facilities or communications facilities and described computers, including computers that manage website data, and includes access to protected passwords, and includes implied threats to hold or handle such data in exchange for something. And I'll keep y'all going because now we're in count 7. So let's see here. Count 7. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Let's see. Okay, it's citing the, like, it's similar to cyber stalking, but inflicting emotional distress. I'm trying not to reread y'all if the phrases sound exactly the same as far as what I'm seeing so far. Count 8 is tort of outrage. Black Titanic has been subjected to conduct supporting a civil action providing that 1, that the actor intended to inflict emotional distress or that he knew or should have known that emotional distress was the likely result of his conduct. 2, that the conduct was extreme and outrageous. 3, that the actions of the defendant were the cause of the plaintiff's distress. And 4, that the emotional distress sustained by the plaintiff was severe. Count 9, negligence per se. Black Titanic has been subjected to conduct supporting a civil action of negligence per se. 1, that the statute was enacted to protect a class of persons that includes the litigant seeking to assert the statute. 2, that the injury was of the type contemplated by the statute. 3, that the party charged with negligent conduct violated the statute. And 4, that the statutory violation proximately caused the injury. Count 10, conversion. Black Titanic has been subjected to conduct supporting a civil action where plaintiff can prove conversion by showing that the defendant destroyed or exercised dominion over property to which at the time of the defendant's destruction or exercise of dominion, the plaintiff had a general or specific title and of which the plaintiff was in actual possession or to which the plaintiff was entitled to immediate possession. Count 11, fraud, deception, misrepresentation. Black Titanic has been subjected to conduct supporting a civil action and the awarding of punitive damages under these code sections for reckless misrepresentations. Misrepresentations of a material fact made recklessly without knowledge constitute legal fraud. In all cases of deceit, knowledge of a falsehood constitutes an essential element. A reckless representation of facts as true, which the party may not know to be false if intended to deceive, is equivalent to a knowledge of the falsehood. Count 12, fraud, misrepresentations of material facts. Misrepresentations of a material fact made willfully to deceive or recklessly without knowledge and acted on by the opposite party, or if made by mistake and innocently and acted on by the opposite party, constitute legal fraud. Count 13. Hold on, 13 is on there. Suppression of material facts. Suppression of a material fact which the party is under an obligation to communicate constitutes fraud. The obligation to communicate may arise from the confidential relations of the parties or from the particular circumstances of the case. Now we're going to count 14 of 21. Count 14 is deceit. Willful misrepresentation of a material fact made to induce another to act and upon which he does act to his injury will give a right of action. Mere concealment of such a fact, unless done in such a manner as to deceive and mislead, will not support an action. In all cases of deceit, knowledge of a falsehood constitutes an essential element. A fraudulent or reckless representation of facts as true, which the party may not know to be false if intended to deceive, is equivalent to a knowledge of the falsehood. Count 15, deceit, fraudulent deceit. Let's see. I'm gonna read it. A, one who willfully deceives another with intent to induce him to alter his position to his injury or risk is liable for any damage which he thereby suffers. B, a deceit within the meaning of this section is either 1, the suggestion as a fact of that which is not true by one who does not believe it to be true. 2, the assertion as a fact of that which is not true by one who has no reasonable ground for believing it to be true. 3, the suppression of a fact by one who is bound to disclose it or who gives information of other facts which are likely to mislead for want of communication of that fact. Or 4, a promise made without any intention of performing it. Count 16, negligent supervision / hiring. Black Titanic has been subjected to conduct supporting a civil action that the employer knew or in the exercise of ordinary care should have known that its employee/agent was incompetent. In the master and servant relationship, the master is held responsible for his servant's incompetency when notice or knowledge, either actual or presumed, of such unfitness has been brought to him. Liability depends upon its being established by affirmative proof that such incompetency was actually known by the master, or that, had he exercised due and proper diligence, he would have learned that which would charge him in the law with such knowledge. So this one is a really, to me, a connection to where they can later name other parties. And so Kingdom Reign, I feel like y'all could be in one of those parties to be later named, especially based on negligent supervision/hiring. Count 17, wantonness. Black Titanic has been subjected to conduct supporting a civil action. 1, the conscious doing of some act or the conscious omission of some duty. 2, with the knowledge of the existing conditions. And 3, while conscious that from the doing of that act or by the omission of that duty, injury will likely or probably result. Count 18, violation of Stored Communication Act. Interference through fraud or any manipulation of a legal process that interferes with compelled disclosure of store, wire, and electronic communications and transactional records held by a third party. The Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution protects a person's right to be secure in the person's houses, paper, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Count 19, violation of the First and 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Black Titanic has been subjected to conduct supporting a civil action, violation of freedom of speech and assembly. Count 20, violation of Section 1 of the Alabama Constitution. Section 1, equality and rights of men, that all men are equally free and independent, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Count 21 of 21, restraining order. Black Titanic has been subjected to conduct supporting a civil action described in detail herein. Miss Black Titanic seeks injunctive relief and or temporary or permanent restraining order, which will stop Maurice Scott and or OWN from violating Miss Black Titanic's First Amendment activity and to enjoin civil harassment. Form and scope of injunction or restraining order. Every order granting a restraining order shall describe in reasonable detail and not by reference to the complaint or other document the act or acts sought to be restrained, and is binding only upon the parties to the action, their officers, agents, servants, employees, and attorneys, and upon those persons in active concert or participation with them who receive actual notice of the order by personal service or otherwise. So this is Black Titanic's prayer for relief. Wherefore, as included in each count above, Black Titanic has been damaged and otherwise damaged, and therefore seeks compensative, monetary, emotional, actual, punitive, and all other damages allowed by law, which include medical bills, loss of income, travel, inconvenience, attorney fees, all relevant loss, all relevant damages, attorney fees, cost, and amount no less than $5 million for each count, and or any similar or higher amount determined by a jury, and in addition to awards payable to other counts herein. So, let me say thank you real fast. Let me see here. It didn't go. Hold on. I don't think it updated. But I saw it on here, so let me try to find it and say thank you. Wisdom, I see it. Did it jump on me? Wisdom Tree, thank you very much for the super sticker. I definitely appreciate it. I'll look at a few questions. Let me pop the trunk for my people and for the cash outs that may have come in. We going, and then I'll look at a few questions because y'all, I can only tell you what I see on the paper. You already know how I do. Okay, we going.
All right, we going. What a money reside, what a money reside, what a money reside, what a money reside.
Hey, my sweet sis 41 Fit. Be Unique says this counsel is knowledgeable, fearless, and professional. Love her. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. If online attorney and online law degree don't make you laugh. Let's see. Where's Wanda and Stormy when you need them? You wrong, Francois. Let me see. American Born said, I'll be praying for her to win. Yes, American Born. Thank you for being here, Coco Eyes. Oops. Let's see. Hey, everybody. Sorry I couldn't do my individual greetings, but I definitely appreciate y'all being here. The real lawyers hit him with the book. She's a lawyer. I'm done with you. Not hit him with the book. But you know what, the real Nikki, the way I read that last prayer for relief, it says no less than $5 million for each count. There are 21 counts, and it says no less than $5 million for each count. So I don't know. You're right. She probably, she asking for more than 5, and I just feel like the intimidation that was tried. Thank you, Brenda. I feel like, yeah, he needs to go through this. All of this needs to happen. You got to stop that. Mary Brown said, I've said it many times, God doesn't play about his child. Miss Black Titanic is a child of God. They're going to learn today. Today is a good day, and it is. Yep. It's not playing with him, Miss Elephant One. It's not at all. Not playing. Simone said they big mad now. I can't wait until they add. Right. I'm sorry, but yes. I'm sorry, but I totally agree with you, Simone. I should say that because I'm not sorry. They all going triple bankrupt. Hey. Okay. All right. Well, I got to rest up because as we've already said, and y'all can already see, I love me some True T. I don't know if she's still in here or not, but I saw her in the beginning. So shout out to my sis True T. Oops. Shout out to my sis True T. Please look at her video, but most of y'all probably came because you saw her video first, but I linked her video just in case you didn't see it. Please go look at her video and her other videos. She is the reason. She's like the spearhead of how funds were being raised and are still being raised to continue to support the content creators, because Maurice also named fictitious names until he could later identify other bloggers, content creators. So it's not done until it's done, first of all. And she also said that Black Titanic had to get security, and I think True T got security too. So, and she said Black Titanic, of course, is on a fixed income. So please check out her video because I know she continuously links the GoFundMe, so you can find it easily. And I'll try to go back and put it in my comments and description box as well, so that y'all can see the GoFundMe link. Oh, thank you, Shan. Thank you, Shan. Just put it in the live chat if you're here now as well. But the money's going directly to. I know it's still going to Black Titanic, and I know at the beginning for sure when it was the initial 10K, it was split between Black Titanic and Here for Hot Tea. True Tea is a real one. But I know what I wanted to say. Y'all already know I love me some True Tea, so I just want to say again, I respect those who are blacking out today, and I'm one of the ones that happen to not be blacking out today. We all are grown, and we all know our reasons and ways of how we're going to handle this. If you would like to join us for the watch along, you can join the membership, and then you'll see the link, and we'll be over there and we'll watch it together and we'll review it. I have a creative way of how I'm going to review the episodes. But yeah. Oh, and we're also playing Love and Marriage Huntsville Bingo to kind of just release some of the mental pressure that this show can put us in. So handle it how you handle it. Protect your mental peace. But if you want to join me, just join the membership through Patreon or YouTube. The link's always in my description box, and we'll be watching it together tonight. And so I will have to see y'all later. So that's why I also can't be just hanging around forever. Hey, Here for Hot Tea. Hey, little sis. She's the realest person on the internet. She is. When I tell you whatever True Tea says, she does. She is a woman of action and of her word. Her integrity is like top tier. So yes, I respect True Tea so much. I am so grateful and humbled that she respects and trusts me. I definitely appreciate it. Respect due to all. I so agree. If you join the membership, you'll see the link. So you just come to the link when it actually I think it'll be at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you join the membership, you'll see my post, and that's the how. Let's see here. Yes, thank you so much to True T. And she don't stop. She ain't playing around. Like she's not a one and done type person. Like she be really in there. She's for real. Here for Hot Tea says solid. So much respect for her. So true. And of course, please support the content creators that are in the chat. I have seen, of course, my little sis Here for Hot Tea. Of course, True Tea. I've seen Pinky the Housewife. Of course, support Black Titanic. My middle sis Journey to Jasmine is in here. I feel like I saw Color Me Entertain. It may have been others, but for me the chat's moving faster than normal. And my shout out to my mods that's trying to mod the chat. Thank you so much. Yes, please share, repost. I appreciate y'all. True T is, well, I don't want to say that because I don't know if she said that publicly, but share, repost. Definitely appreciate it. Please spread the word. Thank you so much. Here for T said we'll watch from there, so it helps the blackout. If y'all want to watch, do it with the CCs that's tuning in behind the wall. Good point. Here for Hot Tea. Oh, they are. Dang, they probably go as soon as I finish this, and they're gonna probably take it down. Lord. All right. Well, I got it saved in StreamYard too, so we'll see. We'll just pray some protecting hands. Don't be touching my stuff. This is just, it is what it is. It's not bad. It's the legal documents. It is what it is. She ain't said nothing that ain't already out there, and I just showed y'all the legal documents. Like I had to screenshot it because I ain't want to put nobody's business out there, but yeah, it is what it is. They fast. They be trying, don't you? Or don't they? They gonna learn today, Lisbeth. Yep. Yes, and thank y'all. Okay, I'll let y'all go. I gotta go get some rest before we do our watch along. Definitely appreciate y'all. And hey, Lala. Hey. I won't be reviewing, but I never reviewed it for real. Y'all know, be safe. Yes, be safe. Yes. All right, y'all. Keep supporting, and I'll put that GoFundMe link in my description box in the comment section. I'll see y'all later. Thank you very much for joining me. Talk to you later. Bye.
I've been taking my time, taking all